Alright, welcome to the second video in this series. We are still writing variable expressions, but we are using multiplication this time. But before we get to the multiplication, let's just practice writing an expression. So pause and see if you can write the expression showing the difference of A and the sum of 10 and B. I am betting that you have one of these two things. Either it written like this, a minus 10 plus b without parentheses, or a minus 10 plus b with parentheses. Since it was the difference of a and the sum, so the difference of a and the sum, we need the parentheses. So we are taking this whole sum away from a. So we need the parentheses. So this one does not work. There is a lot to take in on this page. So please annotate, take notes, whatever you need to do to remember what I say on the video. So which of these has the least number of symbols? So by symbols, I mean a variable, a number, a multiplication symbol, parentheses. So if we look and we can count, this one has 1, 2, 3. This one has 1, 2, 3. This one has 2, and this one has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So the one that has the least amount is this, A, B. So all of these mean the same thing. They all mean A times B. But when we are working with variable expressions and we are simplifying, the simplest form is the one with the least number of symbols that means the same thing. So I want to talk about why we don't want to use x. Some of you are still using x as a multiplication symbol when we're working with variables. So when we are not, why might we not want to use like this one? And I hope you realize that it is because, this is a common sense thing, the x could also be a variable. It is a very, very common variable that we use. So that is why you should not use x with variables as a multiplication symbol. All right, write the product. Product, remember, means multiplication of 5 and 7 in two different ways. So I'm going to write some down. 5 times 7 like that. Since there are no variables, I can use 5 times 7. We can use parentheses. What about this one? That does not mean 5 times 7. That means 57. And I point that out because with this one, if we were plugging in a 5 for A and a 7 for B, we would not put them right next to each other like that, because that does not mean multiplication anymore. We would have to put in a symbol to mean 5 times 7. So be careful when you're evaluating. Okay, so what I said before is that when writing expressions using the simplest, the fewest number of symbols, we try to not use any multiplication symbols when dealing with variables of some sort. So you're going to be using math terms to describe equations. So we'll be using terms like factor, product. So remember, a factor is part of a multiplication symbol. A multiplication problem. Product is the answer. Quotient, division, coefficient. I don't know if you know that one, although I use it. Coefficient is just, it's a constant factor in a variable term. In other words, it is the number in front of a variable. So here, if I have 4x, the 4 is the coefficient. It means you're multiplying x by 4. 108y. 108 is the coefficient. So it's what you're multiplying the variable by. And term. Term is part of an expression. So we're going to be writing expressions. A term can be, it's something that can be added or subtracted from the rest. So here in the expression 7g plus h, 8h plus 3, this is a term, this is a term, and this is a term. The whole thing together is an expression, but each of these are terms. So a term does not have any addition or subtraction in it, just multiplication or division. All right, this page is easy. You're just writing the expression with the fewest number of symbols and characters. The fewest numbers of symbols and characters, and then using terms to describe the expressions. For example, 6 times b, the fewest number, we would take that multiplication symbol out, like that. And we know that 6b is a term. 6 is the coefficient. Of the variable b. Both 6 and b are factors of the product 6b. So we have lots of vocabulary in here. We have term, coefficient, variable, factor, product, lots of vocabulary. And when you are communicating mathematically, the more precise you can be with the math language, the better. All right, I want you to pause the video and please try to do the rest of these and come back to see how you did. Okay, let's see how you did. If not, if you don't have the same thing, please correct. So this one right here, and I did not write all of this out, but I'm going to talk through it. So make sure you are listening and writing down if you have missed something. So here we needed to use the fewest possible symbols and characters. So I was trying to get rid of all of my multiplication symbols. I could not write 4, 3 because that means 43. So I had to actually do that multiplication. 4 times 3 is 12. Times h, but I don't need a symbol in between there. So I could say that 12 and h are factors of the product 12h, and 12 is a coefficient of the variable h. All right, so I did the same thing with this one. I didn't want to use multiplication symbols, so I had to actually do 2 times 2 times 2, which is 8. A and b, I don't know what those numbers mean, so I'm just going to, what those variables represent, what quantity they represent, so I'm going to leave them A and B. So here I could say, again, this is a term, just like this was a term. So 8AB is a term. 8 is the coefficient of AB. 8 and A and B are all factors in the product A and B. So make sure that you're using all of the vocabulary. All right, next one, D. I showed that I used the commutative property. The commutative property works with multiplication, not just addition. If we have 5 times 3, that means the same thing as 3 times 5. So I changed the order so you could see they're right next to each other. So I have my 15, and then I have my m and the p. So I can say 15mp is a term where 15 is the coefficient of mp, and 15 and m and p are all factors of the product 15mp. All right, last one. I just wrote GW. We do not need to have the 1 in there. That 1, because anything times 1 is itself. So if you're using the fewest possible, we don't need that 1 in there. So we just take that symbol out, and we take the multiplication symbol out, so GW. This term does not have a coefficient other than 1. So the coefficient is 1, but we don't need to write it. And G and W are both factors of the product GW. So on your set of notes, I should see all of that written in here. Okay, one way I can tell that you're not just writing down what I do when I'm looking at notes, is something like this. Make sure you're taking notes. All right, here's a new terminology for you, to expand. To expand means to write it as its products. So instead of shortening it, you're putting back in, you're making it bigger. You're writing it as a product. So, let me get to a pen. So here I'm putting back in that multiplication symbol. So 5g. You're writing it as an expression of its different factors. Okay? So see if you can do these and come back. All right, I'm guessing that mine are a little bit different than yours. So this one was pretty easy. I just put multiplication symbols in between. This one, though, I factored down the 12. So I didn't just write 12 times g. I broke that 12 down into its different factors. So as a reminder about factor trees, you could do 4 times 3 and then 2 times 2. So you're getting it to the prime. So 2 times 2 times 3 times g. Here I wrote, instead of 3 times h times 8, I put my numbers next to each other. So that way, if I needed to then write it with as few symbols as possible, the numbers are right next to each other. And I did the same thing with this one. So again, add to your notes. If you did not write it like this, please do. So the last thing I want to talk about is actually finding the product then. So I'm going to take this apart. I'm going to expand it like we just did. And I can rewrite it as 4 times 7 times f times g, and that equals 28fg. So I found the product. I multiplied it. I wrote it as small as I could. Now, bottom line, if you need to write this out, you can, but many times I just think I deal with the numbers first. 4 times 7 is 28, and then the variables. So here I would do my numbers. 3 times 9 is 27, and then I write the variables in alphabetical order. So D, E, Y, Z. This one is interesting. Double the product of this. So I'm going to do the product of this first. So 6 times 3 is 18, and then I have a y, and actually I'm going to expand this out so you can see it a little better. So I did these, and now I'm going to put the variables in alphabetical order, B, C, Y, and then it says double. Double means if you have 6 cookies and you double that, you have 12 cookies. So you're multiplying this by 2. So 18 times 2, 2 times 8 is 6, carry the 1. So now I have 36 B, C, Y. All right, so the vocabulary was an expression in expanded form. That just means it's written as the sums or differences of the products, and it could be variables raised to the whole number. So you're just expanding it out. All right, that's it for this lesson. We out.